Hello, my name is Laurie, and I've been asked to talk about and demonstrate a really simple breathing technique called 7-11 breathing, which is incredibly useful in order to reduce anxiety and to deal with difficult situations generally, in order that you can cope better with life as it throws its various problems at you. So it's a technique that I learnt as part of my Human Givens therapeutic training. And it's used a lot, for example, if people suffer from anxiety attacks or panic attacks. It's a very, very useful technique. A few things to say first, really, of why it works and what's good about it. Well, first of all, the breathing is an automatic function that we don't take much notice of generally. But actually, it's something that we can control very well. And it's one of those few bodily functions, if you like, that we have the ability to control, even though they're also automatic. And in particular, when it comes to breathing, the way to think about it is that it's like the remote control for the brain, the remote control for the mind. So in the same way that a remote control can reduce the volume on a TV or change the channel, so the way that you approach your breathing can have the similar effect on your mind and the state of your internal, let's say, balance. Now, the reason it does this in particular is that the in-breath tends to be associated with your what's known as the sympathetic nervous system, which is the one that gets you ready to fight or to run, and it's the fight or flight response that's associated with and becoming in a ready state for action. The out-breath is associated with the relaxation state, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, and that is the situation in which you are effectively calm, relaxed, digesting food, etc. And normally, if everything's going well, there's a balance between the in-breath and the out-breath that makes sure that the nervous system stays in a kind of equilibrium. But increasingly in society and in life generally, we are overly stressed by situations that arise. And it's perfectly normal that that should happen. Whether it be you're in the middle of an argument, or maybe your kids are overwhelming you because of the demands they're making, whether you're worried about long-term issues. All kinds of situations bring a lot of stress into our lives. For some people, it might even be just the stress of city living or commuting in rush hour, if we remember that before the lockdown. But those sorts of things, anything like that, can trigger an emotional response in the brain that basically puts you into a fight or flight mode. And fight or flight happens when our emotional response to something overwhelms all other aspects of how we react. So when you're emotionally responding to something, whether it's anger, anxiety, or stress, what happens is your focus of attention, the focus of attention of the mind, becomes incredibly narrow. You really kind of hone in on the way you're feeling, and it seems like that problem overtakes everything else in your field of vision. Now, only by relaxing the central nervous system, and in particular the part of the brain that's known as the limbic system, which is the sort of animal response part, only when that is relaxed can you then have a broader perspective and reframe the problem so that you can bring a solution to bear. This is why it's important and so useful and so easy to do a relaxation breath that doesn't require you to be an expert in mindfulness or meditation or anything like that. It is simply the remote control that will allow you to reset yourself in any situation, and it's called 7-11. Now, the numbers don't really matter. It's called 7-11 because it's easy to remember. The important thing is that the count of the in-breath is shorter than the count of the out-breath. Or to put it another way, the out-breath must be longer than the in-breath, because if the out-breath is longer than the in-breath, there is no way in which your autonomic nervous system can stay in a state of stress. That's just simply a physiological condition. So you have that power to do that. So you may ask, well, how do I count 7 and 11? How many beats is that? And of course it's going to vary person by person. So in my case, it might be something like, the in-breath might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the out-breath 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So as you see, there's just that slightly longer version of the out-breath compared with the in-breath. And we're going to practice that in a minute. So you have to find your own count. You can't obviously do it too slowly, 1, 2, because otherwise what will happen is you'll end up running out of breath or getting to the top of the thing. So it's really important that you just find a rhythm that works for you. And so let's start. Now, the other thing to say about breathing is you'll notice that when you get anxious or upset, the breathing tends to go up into the top of the chest, and it tends to be shallow breathing, and the emphasis tends to be on the in-breath and not very much on the out-breath. That's kind of the typical thing. So we're basically reversing that with consciousness, and it doesn't matter how you're feeling, you can always do this breathing. Now, I'm going to suggest that we practice that now, so hopefully you're sitting comfortably. But please bear in mind that this breathing technique can be done anywhere. I mean, I use it if I'm standing up, walking, about to go into a meeting, I know I'm going to go into a challenging situation, or I find myself in a challenging situation. So it's not that you have to be in the perfect conditions to do it, just this might be a good way of practicing it to start off with. So what I'd like you to do is just sit comfortably and just have your 2 feet on the ground, and bring your attention to your body so that you recognize your feet on the ground and maybe your hands on your lap. And now when you take a breath, think about breathing not from the chest but from the belly. So that's the other important thing to remember. So it's not a breath that's up here, it's a breath that starts from the belly and rises up. So I'm going to start you off now. We're going to do no more than a minute now just to demonstrate it, and I'll let you go into your own counting in a second, but I'll start it off. So I'll invite you perhaps just to close your eyes now, and inhale and exhale completely just to prepare ourselves. Take your attention to your body, sitting comfortably with your eyes shut, and on an inhale we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Inhale in your own count. Exhale in your own count of 11. And let's just continue for 10 or so rounds like this. And slowly I just invite you to reopen your eyes and just check in with yourself and notice if there's been any change. We only did a very, very few rounds of 7-11 breathing there. And I think if the question arises as to how long should you do it for, there is no set time, though my recommendation would be that 3 minutes of something like this done properly will be sufficient to reset your nervous system and to reset your focus and to de-arouse the fight or flight impulse that's happening in the brain. Longer is great, but 3 minutes is sort of about 15 to 20 rounds, I think. So that is quite significant. But as I said to you, I find myself doing it even in the middle of meetings or in the middle of negotiations or whatever it might be in difficult circumstances. And you'll find that it's very difficult when you're breathing with this extended out breath to still focus on a negative emotion. So really simple technique to use. And the only other thing I would add, just as a sort of a bonus if you like, is you probably notice that when you breathe in, at the top of the in-breath there's a kind of a mini pause, like you reach the top of a mountain and then you roll down the other side. You might want to just develop that little pause at the top just before extending the out-breath. Adds a layer of further control and further relaxation. All you're doing really is bringing attention to the fact that your out-breath is going to be a little bit longer and extended. And it'll take a little bit of practice to get used to controlling your breath and doing it with relaxation and not tightening any muscles. But I'd recommend you practice this. And thank you for listening. I wish you all a great deal of luck, and hopefully we'll meet again in the next video. Thanks very much.